When we gave Grok access to Ripple's liquidity model, ISO 20022 migration data, and real-time settlement flows, it generated a number that stopped us cold. $250. That's what Elon Musk's AI projected as the logical end-of-year price for XRP, not based on hype, but on corridor demand, global liquidity replacement, and structural velocity. In fact, it labeled the $250 target as a baseline output under current scaling trajectories. Most people will never see this coming because they still believe XRP is a speculative altcoin. They don't understand what it's being positioned to do, who's behind it, or why so many central banks are integrating RippleNet quietly behind the scenes. But once you model the data the way Grok did, the math becomes hard to ignore. So let's walk through exactly how it got there and why the number might actually be conservative. As of today, XRP is trading around $3.08, with a circulating market cap near $183 billion. The supply sits at approximately 59.24 billion tokens. For XRP to hit $250, the market cap would need to rise above $14.8 trillion. Sounds crazy until you understand what XRP is actually being used for. Every day, the global financial system moves over $425 billion in cross-border settlements. That's over $155 trillion per year. These flows are mostly invisible to the public, but they represent the arteries of global commerce. The vast majority of these transactions still depend on multi-step conversion chains involving Nostrovostro accounts, local currency pairings, and days-long clearing windows. Traditionally, this system relied on correspondent banking, slow, opaque, and expensive. But with the shift to ISO 20022 messaging, those rails are being rebuilt. The new system is programmable, interoperable, and designed for machine-readable liquidity integration. That's where Ripple comes in. Ripple's on-demand liquidity product, ODL, is already live in over 70 corridors, including Singapore, Brazil, UAE, Mexico, and Australia. It uses XRP as a neutral bridge asset to instantly settle fiat conversions across borders. In 2023, ODL processed just under $30 billion in volume. But as of Q2 2025, that figure has more than tripled. And Ripple has confirmed it expects double-digit percentage capture of global remittance and wholesale settlement volume by the end of this year. When we asked Grok to simulate XRP's price based on corridor activation velocity, average float time, and mandated liquidity coverage ratios, here's what happened. First, it modeled 2% penetration of the global cross-border flow. That's roughly $3.1 trillion per year using XRP as the bridge. Then it calculated the minimum liquidity cushion needed to support that transactional load without causing price volatility. Based on historical volatility compression, Grok assigned a 5x liquidity buffer, meaning $15 trillion in real-world XRP liquidity would be required to service those flows without disruption. Divide $15 trillion by the current circulating supply, and you land just above $250 per XRP. But the output didn't stop there. Grok noted that this model assumes no retail speculation, no hoarding, and zero programmatic burns, just pure institutional corridor usage. That means the $250 figure doesn't depend on hype. It depends on banks, liquidity hubs, and sovereign payment rails continuing what they've already started. Let's anchor this with real data. Ripple is now working with more than 40 central banks globally. It holds regulatory approval for institutional payment routing in the US, UK, Singapore, UAE, and Brazil, all of which are ISO native jurisdictions. Even more notably, several of these jurisdictions are actively replacing legacy domestic settlement infrastructure with RippleNet-based tools. And in Q3 of 2025, Ripple quietly updated its developer portal to show liquidity path routing algorithms using AI agents, meaning the settlement process is being automated, optimized, and accelerated. There's another data point Grok picked up: the correlation between corridor activation announcements and XRP price volatility windows. In 19 out of 22 major integration updates, XRP experienced a measurable spike within 96 hours, suggesting the market is starting to respond to utility cues rather than speculation alone. What's more, Grok flagged a pattern most analysts have missed: the latency lag between corridor integration and market repricing. On average, XRP's price reflects new institutional usage roughly 7 to 10 days after real activation, not before. That delay window is closing fast as liquidity algorithms get smarter. It means we're approaching a point where XRP's price will begin moving in real time with corridor volume, not sentiment. And when that tipping point hits, the reflexive feedback loop could trigger a vertical breakout before the public even realizes it started. Grok's forecast also factored in one critical wildcard, the pending Genesis Act, which contains provisions for U.S. Treasury-backed liquidity corridors using digitally settled neutral bridge assets. While XRP is not named directly, its existing integrations and ISO compliance make it one of only 3 assets that fit all current regulatory criteria. So what happens if XRP becomes a strategic liquidity buffer for even 5% of U.S. outbound settlement? Grok's models adjust the projected price upward to as high as $400 per token. And that's without factoring in the BlackRock Ripple custody link, which multiple sources have suggested is already being tested through private sandbox environments. If even a fraction of BlackRock's $10 trillion under management intersects with Ripple's custody architecture, the price elasticity would snap upward. Still think $250 is out of reach? Let's compare. Bitcoin is trading just above $117,500 with a market cap of $2.34 trillion. But it's not ISO compliant, doesn't interact with institutional payment rails, and is too slow for real-time settlement. Its role is digital gold, a store of value, not a bridge. Gold sits at a market cap of around $16 trillion, yet it's almost entirely passive. XRP, by contrast, is designed to move value, not store it. It's engineered to be liquid, interoperable, and compliance adaptive. It doesn't need to be hoarded. It needs to be used, and that's exactly what's beginning to happen. Which brings us to the timing. Why now? Because all of these systems are converging. ISO 20022 is now live across FedNow, Swift ECB tips, and BRICS Core. The structural rails are already ISO native. RippleNet is integrated. Regulatory walls are coming down. And the global debt spiral is forcing new tools. The U.S. national debt is now $36.2 trillion and rising fast. Interest payments are expected to exceed $776 billion this year alone. That's nearly 17% of total federal spending, just to service debt. Central banks know this model is unsustainable. They need faster, cheaper, interoperable rails to manage liquidity flow without relying on fragile reserve cycles. That's exactly what XRP offers, and Grok sees it. But Grok also issued a warning. If public consensus is still treating XRP as a meme coin, it said they've already missed the signal. Because by the time major exchanges start pushing XRP headlines again, by the time CNBC panels are debating it and retail starts flooding in, the price curve will already be vertical.